Welcome everybody to this regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Mojave Air and Spaceport, January 19, 2016, 2 p.m. here in the boardroom. If we will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Balentine, if you would lead us, please.
Sir, please follow me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's taking roll call? Are you doing that, Mr. Attorney?
all are present but Director Painter.
Affirmative.
All right.
We have the agenda here for approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is approved. At this time, are there any community announcements of a public nature? Anybody wishes? Yes, sir.
Does Clipperton, Mojave Chamber of Commerce. We just received notice that the Planning Commission will be conducting a hearing on our application for conditional use permit to install the Chamber of Commerce caboose office on the property north of Mission Bank to be used for a little pocket park visitor center. So things are moving forward for that project. Thought the community would like to know that.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Are there any other community announcements? If not, we move to item 4, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial and will be approved by one motion. If no member of the board, staff, or public wishes to comment or ask questions, is there any public comment on the consent agenda? There being none, is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Deaver to approve the consent agenda. Seconded by Dr. Peterson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. I asked you questions ahead of time. We move to item 5, business items, approval of mid-year budget revision. Staff report, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mike and I will be reporting information on the mid-year budget update. So the board recalls for the fiscal year 14-15, we expected to end the year, or excuse me, 15-16, we expected to end the year at about a $550,000 loss based on a couple of anticipated expenditures that are no longer happening, or at least we don't think they will be. So we've made some revisions to the budget and a few requests to shift some expenses around. I've highlighted these for the most part in the staff memo. I'm happy to go through them in a little bit greater detail if you like, if you have specific questions. Mike and I have the expanded version of the budget here, if there are any specific questions on individual line items. But we ask your approval for the mid-year review. We intend to submit at least one more next quarter with another update and potential budget revision at that time, but we'll wait and see how it goes this quarter.
Does that complete your report?
Sure.
Are there any public comments on the matter? There being none, are there any questions by the board or comments?
What's the increase in the marketing budget for?
So we're actually at almost completely 100% of the marketing budget based on a couple of sponsorships that we've paid for thus far this year. The marketing budget took the biggest hit when we revised the budget this year. It typically is around $80,000 to $100,000, and it's at $30,000 right now. So there are a few more activities we'd like to participate in through June. The AV Board Trade Business Outlook Conference, as an example, we've always sponsored that. As it is right now, we don't have the budget to do that. For instance, any other county activities that may come up in the near future, we don't have the budget to sponsor those activities either. So that's the primary reason for the increase, is the sponsorships.
Didn't we talk about this a month or two back though, because we spent some money on something and then we talked about we're going to have to make tough decisions on the marketing budget down the way?
That's true. We
So
did
we're not making a tough decision, we're just going to add $25K?
We ended up doing the marketing video this year, which is what maxed out our marketing budget.
How much did it cost to
$9,000, I think. Yeah.
$9,000.
So the reason really for requesting some of the additional funds to be added to these categories is because we're anticipate now ending the year in a profit. So we're no longer asking to dip into reserves for some of these items. Even with the requests that we're making, we still anticipate ending the year at about a $97,000 profit.
Just a clarification, I wanna parse out profits and operating profits and losses. Because we make it sound like we budgeted for a $500,000 loss. But I don't think that we actually budgeted for a $500,000 operational loss, did we, Mr. Grouse?
Well, we budgeted that we would use reserves.
But
Well,
We anticipated.
there was a chunk of that was capital expenditures.
That's correct.
That's non-operational, correct?
Correct.
that was about
That-
$500,000.
It's just something so that the public and the press understand that we weren't spending more than we were taking in operations.
On ongoing
Yeah,
operations.
yes,
That's correct.
the net loss was we were taking from reserves to invest in some capital projects. And under accounting principles for governments, we might show that net loss, but that wasn't what our operation,
We
that
had,
wasn't our operational
we had
results.
some one-time expenditures for which we budgeted to use reserves.
Did you have any other questions, Dr. Peterson? Concerns?
I always got the same concern. No.
Okay. Are there any other board questions or comments?
No, sir. Nope.
Okay, is there any public comment on this matter? There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the budget, the mid-year budget report. Second.
Motion by Mr. Deaver, seconded by Mr. Balentine. All in favor say aye.
I'm opposed.
Motion passes. Board reports, we have one ad hoc committee that was organized by Dr. Peterson on his last day, and we will have a report from Mr. Balentine on that in reference to our discussions with the Mojave Public Utility District and sanitation fees. Sanitation, sorry, that's not the right word, sewer.
Yeah, that is correct. Dr. Peterson, as chair, appointed Director Evans and I to a committee, a review and to meet and make a recommendation to the board, which I don't think we're quite ready yet. We did meet briefly after the last board meeting for just a few minutes to kind of get a gist of what we were looking at. Prior to the meeting today, we met with Director Evans, our CEO, Karina, Kevin, Decoy from the Water District, and one of his board members, Al Hansen, here. Basically, I think what we were trying to do is to understand what they're proposing, which involves a lot of numbers, and deriving how they're getting what they're requesting with these numbers. It would take a little bit of an explanation to do it. I don't think we all want to hear it yet, but I think we all have a clear understanding. The board, or the committee, has asked Karina to meet with their CEO and ask a couple of questions regarding some thoughts that we had on it. I think at that point, probably next board meeting, there'll be a recommendation back to the board to take some action. Any questions?
Okay, thank you for that report. CEO report.
I have a couple of items. So you may notice in your board packet is a written CEO report. I'm hoping this will be somewhat helpful as we identify goals and objectives going forward. So the board can be a little bit more updated on some of the progress we're making on the goals and objectives. In addition to just a few other updates that we have, and the one that I wanted to point out here is I'm actually going to be in Washington, D.C. at the FAA conference next board meeting. So Kevin will fill in for me next board meeting, that's February 2nd. In addition to the written report, we've got the financial reports, which we're now moving under just reports instead of having an item specifically for the board to vote on. So I'll just ask if you have any specific questions on the reports. I don't know if there's anything particularly you want to highlight, Mike, or just wait for questions.
Just to highlight that the cash balances have gone up again.
and they were about $300,000. And I think that's a reflection that we had a good revenue month. We had some extra fuel sales this month, which helped, and expenses, for whatever reason, I don't know, unfortunately, were a little lower. And then in addition, we had the December property tax collections in the amount of $282,000, and that always helps the cause as well.
Yeah, any questions by the board on the financial?
This is good information. In fact, this thing about we talked about this during the budget process, solar covered parking. Every time I go to Lancaster, there's another school or business or somebody that's doing that. And the other advantage to the employees here is, you know, I park my car in the garage as much as I can, and it really beats down on cars. And make your car last longer, believe it or not. I think it's good.
So that was an item I wanted to separate, specifically was the solar covered parking. So this is a project that Kevin's been working for a little while now.
Can we stop right there for just a second?
Okay.
Does the board have any questions relative to the financial reports? There being none?
Okay. So the solar covered parking is something that we've been looking at for quite a few months now, just to see if it's a viable option here for the airport. And it looks like it is. We would like to engage a consultant to help us through this process, someone who's done these projects really all over the state. He's got a lot of expertise in the state of California. He understands a lot more about the tax credits and things like that that will apply to these vendors. And he's worked with a lot of vendors across the state as well, so he can help us identify a few different vendors that might be able to install some of these structures. So we're looking at a couple of different locations to install the solar covered parking, one being our parking lot out here outside of our building, the main one being at the event center. So there's a huge amount of parking available there that we can install these. And the power would feed our facilities, our admin building here, the tower, the fire department, and a couple other facilities around the airport. Our annual expense with Edison is around $150,000. We expect that to be cut down significantly if we can get this project off the ground. So we would not, in the ideal scenario, which should apply here because of the tax credits, that's what's giving these vendors the incentive to install the structures. We wouldn't pay any upfront costs, so there wouldn't be any capital outlay for us. They would pay all of that because they're the ones that were ultimately benefiting from the tax deal going on right now. So I'll keep the board informed as this progresses, but I just wanted to inform everyone this is a project we're looking seriously at to engage a consultant to help us through the process.
Be advised that you put these things in, you are severely height limiting anything in that area.
Yeah, it is definitely something we're considering, especially at the event center, because with a lot of the events that go on, there's a lot of trucks that come in through there as well. So
And I must remember how good an idea this other solar farm was, and it wasn't.
right.
Yeah, but that was new technology.
Well, we still won on that deal.
No,
Sure, we didn't put any money out. We did get some free energy, and we have some equipment left.
we put out 25,000,
I think we had a few in
30,000.
the end, yeah.
Did we?
Absolutely, we bought the remnants. Yeah, we spent
Oh,
significant
that's
money,
right, we bought
and then it
some,
turned into garbage.
Well, I'd like to definitely see if we, as we look into it, that the cost and the benefit, and not just cost benefit in dollars, but benefit, that there's a benefit into the future. That we're not cutting ourselves short on something else that we'd like to do because now we have these structures here. So I'm not against it, I'm for it in theory, but we don't want to limit ourselves to what we do. It's just like Dr. Peterson said.
Benefit
Once you're in there,
and 100 knot wind
yeah.
survival.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
104, what was the,
It's
104?
80 some miles an hour. Some of the vendors that we're looking at are already installing structures all over the Antelope Valley, so I hope that you've done a lot of the preliminary work to find out that these structures are wind tolerant.
Did the CHP have any problems with there?
I've had a couple of conversations with Darlena. They seem to really like the structure, but I don't know who their vendor is yet, so we'll find that out as well.
And, you know, and they still are at the same time. Visual obstructions, visual pollution. At some point, it's like having too many windmills on the hill. That's just my personal
Al
opinion.
brings up a very valid point. We put a lot of land out here. in any significant system, I'm sure tying it into a meter somewhere is a lot easier than using up, valuable real estate for something that you may regret later.
Anyways, we will see as we go down the route.
Oh, yeah, I'll keep the board informed.
Thank you. All right, this portion of the meeting is reserved for board members to address any items on the agenda. Any board member announcements?
I have one. We had Karina joined us for a really good Eastern Economic Alliance meeting Thursday. Laurel Iobiot was our speaker, and a lot of really good stuff came out of that. She is trying to change the way things are done so that when somebody wants to come in here and start it, in fact, she used what they did for the airport, Spaceport as an example of that, so that most things can get approved over the counter as a building permit rather than going through the EIR process. So I thought that was really good. It's a good attitude.
We didn't get an update on the runway lighting?
Oh, sure. Kevin might have a little bit more details here, but it's actually going faster than expected. So we expect them to finish, do we know when?
Tomorrow.
Okay. It's supposed to be early February, so they're doing fantastic work. So it looks like 826 will be open sooner than expected.
The only other thing is the fog seal and the painting will come after. We'll have to schedule that when the weather gets nicer. That'll be.
I wanted to give an attaboy out to the tower and the contractors for we had that really windy day last week, and so we needed 2.6 for a couple of flights, and they were able to clear off and facilitate the landings and the takeoffs that needed to happen for about 30 minutes there.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All the contractors that come out here have a pretty good appreciation for, this is an airport first and foremost, and they're pretty good about getting off the runways quickly when we need them.
I talked to one of the employees, apparently they do a lot of airports, so they really.
That's all they do.
Activities, yeah.
Did you have anything, Director Balentine?
No.
Were you done with your comments? I have one comment that I would like to make. As we come into the new budget season for our next budget year, I'd like to have a little workshop meeting with the board of directors in advance of the budget being prepared, just so that we have some of the ideas, thoughts, and concerns before the budget is compiled, so that you can address them if you feel that that's necessary. So when the appropriate time comes and you're ready to schedule that, if you could let us know as a board, so we can schedule time to do that. I hope that the members are amenable to something like that.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, we move to item number 7, public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anybody that has an item they wish to discuss that is not on the agenda, for which we can take no action? There being none, we move into closed session. Thank you.